Hello. Now I'm going to show you how to play against the London and Jobava setups. So after the moves d4, d6, white can try the London or Jobava setups in different move orders. Um, the Jobava setup is bishop f4 and knight c3, and the London setups don't include the knight on c3, so they are with knight f3 and bishop f4. Okay, so here we're going to see, let me put this with blue. We're going to see knight f3, we're going to see knight c3, and of course bishop f4. There will be transpositions because white can choose one move order or the other. First of all, knight f3, we go knight f6, and now, okay, there is knight c3 or bishop f4. If knight c3, then we can play knight b d7 with idea e5, and if white goes e4, then e5, we reach the Philidor position. And if white goes bishop f4, then knight b d7, and it transposes to the other lines. Let's see knight c3. White is developing the knight there, and he's keeping options about what to do next. I think it's natural to just play knight f6. Now, of course, if white goes e4, it would transpose to the Philidor. So here we're going to see bishop f4 and bishop g5. Bishop g5, white is trying to put some pressure on our position by pinning the knight, and thus making e5 more difficult. But we have good resources against this. Knight b d7, first of all, not to allow white to double our pawns. And now we are ready to harass this bishop with h6 and later on g5. White goes knight f3, developing pieces. If e4, then we can play e5, and we have a great version of the Philidor because of this misplaced bishop on g5. As I said in the previous videos, the bishop on g5 is not doing much in the Philidor setups. So knight f3, and here we go for h6. I think this is useful just to see what white is going to do with the bishop. And bishop h4 is the normal retreat. If white goes bishop f4 instead, then there is c5, and it will transpose to some lines we're going to see later on in this video, but with h6 included, which obviously benefits us. So bishop h4 is the normal retreat. We go g5. It's tempting to hunt down this bishop. Bishop g3, and now knight h5. The position is probably about equal, but I slightly prefer black here because we are going to get the bishop pair. Of course, we're not in a hurry to take on g3. We have useful moves and good moves here like bishop g7, e6, queen e7, and so on. And at the right moment, we can even take the bishop on g3. So this is bishop g5, not really challenging. Let's see bishop f4. This is the Jobava setup, the Jobava London. But here the bishop is restricted by the pawn on d6, so it's not the same. We go knight b d7. Idea is to play e5 with tempo. And now if white doesn't stop us from playing e5, with e5 we get a great position. Otherwise, white plays knight f3, and this will transpose to the main line that we're going to talk about later in this video. Bishop f4 probably is the most flexible move, and it immediately shows white's intention to go for London setups. Here, knight d7 is a good move. Already we are preparing e5 with tempo at the right moment. And here, okay, knight f3 and e3. e3 doesn't do anything to stop us from playing e5, so we go for it. And we immediately get a great position because the dark square bishop will be shut off. And then we can follow up with fianchettoing this bishop, g6, bishop g7. Of course, white will put the bishop to g3, and we'll be able to attack it. I mean, probably there's nothing wrong with knight f6, but we can play even a bit trickier with knight h6, knight e7, and trying to get a knight to f5. Black has a great position because we managed to get e5 with tempo. So knight f3, of course, white develops the pieces and is preventing us from pushing e5. Knight f6, we are also stopping white from playing e4. And since the idea with e5 is not available anymore, you want to strike the center with c5. Here white has several options, all of them trying to get the London or Jobava setup, and we're going to see them one by one. There is e3, knight d2, knight c3, c3, and h3. So pretty much all the moves that make sense are covered here. e3 is a normal developing move, but it has a big drawback, and London players should know this better, because now we can take the dark square bishop, and we go for it with knight h5. The bishop cannot hide anywhere. That's why usually in London they like to include this move h3 to make room for the bishop to h2. Here white was a bit careless. And okay, bishop g5. White is trying to weaken our position. If he goes on g3, we can just take it, and we didn't weaken our king side. So bishop g5, h6, we're hunting down the bishop, bishop h4, and g5. And here, okay, white has two options. One of them is bishop g3, the other knight fd2 to attack our knight on h5. Let's see knight fd2 first. This is typical idea to counter this g5 move. And white is trying to save the dark square bishop, but here we go, knight df6. This is the point of having the second knight on d7, it can jump to f6, and we are defending on h5, and again, we are renewing the threat on the bishop. Now the white has to continue with his strategy, bishop e2, and we take on h4, bishop h5. Okay, so we got double pawns. On the other hand, g file is open, and we got the bishop pair. Also, I have to say this bishop on h5 is exposed. White will have to move it again. I like this move here for black e5. One idea is if white doesn't castle, to just take on d4 and then go queen e7 with check. Of course, another idea is the very natural move rook g8 to activate the rook. We're going to play that anyway. And the bishop on h5 is hanging, of course. We can go also queen e7, and our plan will be to castle long. Of course, the king side is compromised because of the bad structure, but the queen side is just fine for our king. The h4 pawn is not really a weakness because it's difficult for white to attack it, and also we opened up the g file. So black has a very active position here. Going back, bishop g3 here is the most natural reply. We're not in a hurry to take this bishop. I mean, nothing happens if we take it, but we can play other moves and let white guess when we're going to take the bishop. Bishop g7 is normal developing move. We want to go e6 and queen e7. Bishop d3, now both sides develop their pieces. e6, this is a good idea. We need to develop the queen somewhere, and e7 is very good square for the queen. Knight bd2, queen e7, and I think black is already slightly preferable here because we're going to get the bishop pair, and then we have at least two good plans here. Of course, there could be more, but one of them is to go b6, bishop b7, and develop the bishop. And the other one could be just to castle short and push f5, or go f5 and castle short. Maybe f5 is better first, not to allow white to push e4. So let's put it this way, f5 and then castle. It's true that white has good control over the center, but we're getting the bishop pair, which is a long-term advantage. Let's go back. Knight bd2. White develops the pieces, and the idea is to push e4. But we can easily parry this with knight h5. And now we want to capture the bishop again. If white wants to save the bishop, then he has to go bishop e3. But then after e5, we are seizing some space. We want to play g6, bishop g7, and so on. And it turns out that white's strategy didn't work. He didn't manage to push e4. White just developed the pieces in some random way. And then there is knight c3, which is an ambitious and concrete move. White is going for e4 straight away to fully control the center, and at the same time he's not allowing us to push e5. So we need to act quickly here, otherwise we just get suffocated and white would get a great position. So we need to break the center, and we do this with c5, immediately challenging white center. Now there is e3 and d5. e3 is the more modest continuation, but it's not a bad move. White has a long-term strategy. This could be used in blitz or rapid games. Just go bishop e2, castle, queen d2, put the rooks on the open files. And of course, I forgot to mention white should, let me put this with red, white should include h3 just to keep the dark square bishop alive. So white should start with h3 and then bishop e2, castle, and so on. We're going for fianchetto setup, h3, just to get rid of all these knight h5 threats. Bishop g7, bishop e2. Not much to say here. Both sides are finishing the development. Castle, castle. Okay, now we need to decide how to proceed further. And a6 is a good move because we want to push b5. White goes a4. And here a bit of accuracy is needed, because if we go b6 immediately, white can go d5 and afterwards e4 and so on. And white gets a grip in the center here. We want to avoid this. So we need to take on d4. E takes d4. Now we continue with b6. We want to fianchetto the bishop on b7. Now, of course, d5 for white doesn't make sense because white doesn't have the e4 pawn anymore, and c file is open. We would have the c5 square and so on. So white just continues the plan. Rook e1, bishop b7, queen d2, rook c8. We need to activate all the pieces. The rook is, of course, more active on c8. There are no clear targets yet, but just in case. Rook a d1. White is having the same strategy as us. Rook e8. Of course, it's good to control e7. And now both sides finished the development and activated the pieces. White has a bit more space, but the real fight starts from now on. It's not clear what white will do next. I think black is fine here. This is a fully playable position for both sides. And then there is a more ambitious move, d5. White is seizing more space and wants to follow up with e4 to get full control over the center. And now we need to act quickly, not to allow white to consolidate. And we play queen a5. This is an important move to remember. First of all, we're stopping e4, and at the same time, we want to go b5 or even knight e4 to create some threats. a4 is a good prophylactic move by white to stop us from pushing b5. I mean, if white ignores this threat of b5 with, let's say, knight d2, then we have b5, and it's great to get this pawn here. We are threatening b4 and so on. And also with bishop d2, again, there is b5. Even queen d3 here. Okay, queen d3 is a bit strange. Of course, I would prefer a4, but still it doesn't stop b5, because the d5 pawn is hanging. So white's best move is to go a4 and just prevent b5. Knight e4. We need to seize the moment and create some threats. Well, now the threat is to take on c3. Queen d3 here is the critical move, attacking the knight and defending the c3 knight. If white goes bishop d2, then this plays into our hands. We can just take on d2 and then we follow up with g6, bishop g7. And we took the dark square bishop, which is very important. Queen d3. And here the best move is f5, just to keep this knight in the center. It looks risky, but it works. On a longer term, we want to go, of course, g6, bishop g7 to develop the bishop. So now the position becomes very sharp. And we're going to see here e3, bishop d2, and knight g5. e3 looks like a normal developing move, but it's actually bad because it doesn't address black's threats. And now we can play queen b4. And white is immediately in trouble. The threat is queen b2, and there's no good way for white to stop it. Let's say if white tries rook d1, with the idea if we take on b2, he could take on e4. But now, of course, we're not in a hurry to take. We just go g6 and we follow up with bishop g7, and this is very strong. White is in trouble here. A safe move is bishop d2, just to address this pin. I would expect this move to be seen in practice. We take the bishop, which is very important. Knight takes d2. Now this knight is heading towards c4. Also, at the moment, f5 is under attack. So we go g6. We want to flank to the bishop on g7. Knight c4. This is a very good square for the knights in this kind of positions, and white is hoping that we're going to retreat passively and then to get some edge. But apparently this move, queen b4, works for us. And we're keeping the queen active, and we don't want to allow white to push e4. Instead, white changes his plan, and with rook a3, he wants to chase our queen. But we have this move, knight b6. This is the most precise move. And the queen is saved, and the black has a nice position here. We're going to play bishop g7 afterwards with very strong bishop on the long diagonal. Knight g5 is a more ambitious move, immediately challenging the knight on e4. And also now this knight could have access to the e6 square, where it can create all kinds of threats. So it's best to get rid of the g5 knight, bishop g5. And we shouldn't get carried away with cheap tricks. Now just finish the development. G6 idea is to put the bishop on the long diagonal. And now, given time, we are of course going to get a very comfortable position with black. So white has to act quickly, e4, trying to open up the position. And here it's best to forget about pawns, just go bishop g7, playing for the initiative and finishing the development. White should grab the pawn. What else can he do? And now an important move is queen b4. Of course, we're targeting the b2 pawn. Also, we have the idea to go knight e5, and it's important that after knight e5, queen b5, the queen is defended on b4, so we don't have to take on b5. So queen b4 is a multitasking move. Long castle, well, white at least tries to bring the rook into play. The king is not really safe on c1 because of our bishop on g7. But at least for the moment, b2 is defended. Again, we need to be precise. The position is very sharp. We cannot really play on general principles here. Knight b6 is a good move. We want to go bishop f5, of course. And also we are targeting this a4 pawn. And queen b5, probably in a practical game, white will go for this because it looks very dangerous. All this piece configuration, the bishop on g7, the queen on b4, the knight on b6, they can create all kinds of threats on the white king. So white needs to bail out. g4 can be tried to stop bishop f5, but then after a bishop d7, now he finally is threatening to take on a4, and the position is really double-edged. The sides that can create threats faster will probably win. And there is also f takes g6, a very greedy move. And here the most precise is to go h6. This comes with tempo, and again the position is very complicated, but of course black is fine. So let's say white bails out with this queen b5. Bishop d7 is the only move, and here we can see why it was so important to have the queen on b4. The queen is, so we don't need to take on b5. Queen takes b4, cb4, knight b5, threatening some fork on c7, but this can be easily, we can easily parry this with castle. And well, this is again new and unusual position. Objectively, black is fine, and both sides have chances to play for a win here. Many many pawns are hanging. What can I say? e4, f5 is hanging. If afterwards maybe f2 could be hanging, but also on black side, e7 is hanging, and white is already a pawn up. So Very unclear position. Let's go back. There's also c3 here. Very solid move. White is showing the intention to go for a solid setup, London-like. And this will likely transpose to the main lines in the London. And here, of course, we could play g6 and so on, but I think it's a bit more precise to push b6. We want to play bishop b7 and stop white from pushing e4. White secures the dark square bishop with h3. Always a good move in the London. Bishop b7, knight d2. And here we can see why it was good to develop the bishop here. White cannot play e4 anymore. We go for the double fianchetto. Usually these kind of setups are good and offer um, good good chances. Many times white prefers to have these double fianchetto setups. e3, bishop g7, bishop e2. This is the best square for the bishop because the bishop is not exposed there. Like white, it may seem more ambitious to go bishop d3, but then after castle, and then there are ideas to push e5 all the time and e4, so the bishop would be exposed. On d3, bishop e2, castle, castle, and here we just prepare e5. This is typical move, queen e8. The rook may be useful here on f8 to support f5 later on, so that's why we leave it there. Bishop h2, white is anticipating our e5. We go for it anyway. a4, trying to get some space. No, thank you. We're not allowing you. And again, both sides finished their development and they played in their side of the board. All the pieces are on the board. For now, this bishop on h2 is shut off. Our plan is to go queen e7, maybe king h8, then to move this knight and prepare f5. If white moves this knight from d2, we can also jump to e4. So I like black's chances here, but the game has just started. Let's go back. And now let's see h3. Typical move for the London. The experienced London players always include this move to save the bishop so that they don't fall for the knight h5 trick. g6, we want to finish the development with bishop g7, castle, and then b6, bishop b7. This double fianchetto setup is really good here. Okay, now you're going to see e3, which is the main move, and knight c3. Knight c3 again, white is preparing e4. But I think it's more useful. This move g6 is more useful than move h3 compared to the previous line. c5. Again, now if white goes e3, bishop g7, this transposes to a line that I showed you before. So the most ambitious move is d5. And here, white wasted time with this h3 move, and we have g6 on the board. We have very nice move, b5. Again, this is a typical move to get counterplay. We've seen it in many other positions. And I like this pawn sacrifice here. Um, we played in order to accelerate our development, and we don't want to allow white to consolidate with moves like e4, a4. No way. Knight takes b5, white has to take the pawn. Otherwise, of course, we go b4. So knight b5, queen a5 check, knight c3. So for a pawn, we got the queen on a5, which is good. We open up the b file, which will be useful for our rook. And now we can play knight e4. This pin is annoying for white, especially since we can play bishop g7, rook b8, and um, create even more threats. So queen d3 is the way to defend. If bishop d2, then we can just take the bishop, queen d2, bishop g7. And while here we are a pawn down, but this bishop on g7 is really great. And we have strong pressure on the b file. We play rook b8 afterwards. Black is better here because of these very active pieces. So white goes queen d3. And here we can play bishop g7. You see how important it is to have this extra move g6, because now we create even more threats on c3. White is forced to take on e4, bishop c3, bishop d2, this is forced, bishop d2, knight d2, and rook b8. White is a pawn up, but we are already better due to the lead in development. b2 is weak, and white king is stuck in the center. We are ready to develop our pieces. We have all kinds of threats, maybe knight f6, we can castle. This bishop can get into play soon, and also I don't see a good way for white to defend the pawn on b2. So very nice position for black. White should avoid this. If he really wanted to go knight c3, he should have done it straight away without h3. So more in tune with this h3 move is, of course, e3, complete normal development, bishop g7. And here, okay, bishop e2 is the main move, but we're going to talk about knight d2, c3, and even c4. White has different ways to finish the development in the London setup. Knight bd2 is one of them. We're not impressed, just castle. Of course, now other moves could transpose, so let's say bishop h2, anticipating move e5, but we just go b6. We have this very easy to play setup, easy to play, easy to remember. We don't want to give forced lines where it's not necessary. Just bishop b7, then queen e8, e5. You know how to play these positions. It will very likely transpose. Then there is c3. White is saying, okay, I want to keep all my center very solid now that I developed the bishop. This is fine, but it's not really challenging. The pawns are just very solid, not aggressive. We can castle. And now, again, the moves by white to transpose. We can just go b6, bishop b7, our plan. So let's see bishop c4. Again, we continue our idea, b6, castle, bishop b7, knight bd2, queen e8, and we are preparing e5. I really like this idea. There isn't much to know, just to double flank these bishops, and black gets very good play. Let's say bishop h2, we go e5 anyway. And the fact that white has the bishop on c4 doesn't change much, so we still go for the same plan. Let's say white is trying to go e4, then a5. Usually I don't like to allow white to push on the queen side, so a5 is a good move. I like to stop this queen side expansion. Now white can continue pushing, of course, other moves are possible. White is very solid, but also quite passive, so let's say he's trying to do something on the queen side, but this pawn push is leading nowhere. And we just continue our plan, queen e7. And here black is fine. All the pieces are on the board again. Here, because white played b4, we could have some strange idea to play rook a7 and double the rooks on the a file to put some pressure on the a4 pawn. Of course, this is not necessary. The usual ideas also work. And then there is c4, which is a bit more ambitious. White wants to develop the knight to c3. But this will likely transpose. We can play b6. The double fianchetto. Knight c3, bishop b7. And here, okay, we're going to see queen c2. Because if bishop e2, black can already go knight e4, trading the knights, and castle, and this will just transpose. So let's say white is trying to prevent knight e4. That's the point of queen c2. Castle, and now rook d1. If white goes bishop e2, we have e5, and white cannot take everything on e5 because the g2 pawn is hanging in the end. So rook d1, white wants to stop us from pushing e5. Well, again, we're not impressed. We just go queen e8, stepping away from the pin. And now we're renewing the threat of e5. And we have a good position because white didn't finish the development. And again, all our pieces have good squares here. Instead of this natural queen e8, we could even force the events a bit, although it's not really necessary, but knight h5 is possible, bishop h2, and now because white didn't play bishop e2, we can take on f3. This is just if we want to get some new position, c5, to get white out of his setup, d5, probably forced, and now very good move is b5. Now pawn sack, but we want to open up the position, and this is good for black, but it's more complicated, and it only works on this move order. So if you remember exactly this position and you get it on the board, you can go for it. But otherwise, just sticking to the normal plan with queen e8 is fine. So let's say bishop e2. This is the best square for the bishop on... if white goes bishop d3, the bishop could be exposed there later on to e5 and e4. So white goes bishop e2, castle, castle, and now we go for the double fianchetto setup with b6. We want to follow up with bishop b7, and white will not be able to play e4 anymore. Here we're going to see a4 and c4. We're trying to see some more active setups than knight bd2 and c3. We've seen that before. Black was doing great. Let's say a4. Trying to gain some space on the queen side, but again, we want to stop white from pushing a5. c3, let's say. If white goes knight c3 here, it doesn't change much. We can just go bishop b7 and then we can follow up with knight e4. So c3, bishop b7. Very easy moves by black. Bishop h2, trying to stay flexible. White is anticipating some e5. And now he keeps options to develop this knight to either d2 or a3. But here we can go knight e4. And we want to push e5. Since this is possible, there is no need to go queen e8 anymore. Now it makes sense to challenge this knight on e4 with knight bd2. There is also knight a3, but this doesn't change our plan. We just push e5 with a good position for black. So here we have this knight on e4, which is strong, and also there was no need to go queen e8 anymore. Knight bd2. We can trade the knights, knight d2, knight d2, e5 just to shut off this bishop. Bishop f3. And here a typical move is queen c8 to defend the bishop on b7. And yeah, I wanted to talk about positions like this. So we really like to shut off this bishop, but we need to, I think on a long term, we need to refrain from pushing e4, even if it's tempting. Of course, not in this position, but basically when we can. Because if we push e4 and later on d5, then we would just open up this bishop. So our idea is to keep this bishop shut off. Let's go back. c4. White wants to go knight c3, obviously. And from c3, this setup with c4 and knight c3 controls more squares in the center. Bishop b7. We finished the development, and now our plan is to go knight e4 and e5. Knight c3. If white goes queen c2, then knight e4 is there. So knight c3. Knight e4. Now this is important. You need to go for this before white has time to go queen c2 and prevent us from playing knight e4. The idea of this move is we trade one pair of knights and also open up the g7 bishop. Okay, now we are threatening to double the pawns with knight c3, and then we can go e5. White doesn't want to get the pawns doubled. So knight takes e4, bishop e4. And here we're going to see different moves by white. They don't change the evaluation of the position though. So bishop h2, knight d2, and rook c1. Bishop h2 is a natural move. White knows we're going to play e5. We can go e5, of course, just to break the center right away. It was also possible to retreat the bishop to b7. e5. 92, white is attacking the bishop, and then he wants to go bishop f3. Bishop b7. And this is normal position. White didn't get anything. And now the game Popovic against Leon in Vrnjačka Banja 2021 ended in a draw after bishop f3. Queen c8. Knight b3. I think a draw was agreed here, but black would have been, black is more preferable with a5. Now this knight can be attacked with a4, but Leon was content with a draw. So rook c1. This happened in many games. White is bringing the rook into play, but the rook is not really doing so much there. We just go e5, bishop h2, and queen e7. I like this when we manage to go queen e7 in one go. We don't need to go queen e8, queen e7. And black has a comfortable position here. The bishop on h2 is shut off. And if white goes b4, we can go a5 to open up the a file. Otherwise, we have useful moves like to retreat the bishop and to go a5. Yeah, just a very comfortable position for black. And knight d2. This is very natural. White is attacking this bishop and he wants to play bishop f3, bishop b7. Now we are ready to push either e5 or c5. Bishop f3 just to trade the bishops. White is fighting for the control of the light squares. And here again, this typical move, queen c8, to defend the bishop. And again, we have the pawn strikes e5 and or c5. Here the position is equal, but I like black's chances. So these are the London and Jobava setups. Just a quick recap. Usually, these setups can be reached with different move orders. Bishop f4, let's say knight d7, knight f3, knight f6. White has to be careful here not to go e3 immediately, because then we can take the dark square bishop. I think the most ambitious idea is to go knight c3, and then there is this with d5, queen a5, a4, knight e4, queen d3, and f5. This is quite forced. Black is doing fine, but you need to remember this line because it's a forced variation. On the other hand, the other lines, like if white wants to just go for the London setup, the other lines are quite comfortable for black. And there is this idea to go for double fianchetto. And black is doing great here. There is easy play. And I think these London and Jobava setups are better if white goes d5, not d6. Because with d6, the bishop on f4 is doesn't it loses the scope. E5 square is well defended. Then the London and Jobava setups are all about the control of the e5 square. But Here we are controlling the e5 square, so black is fine. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.